Hi, I'm Emma, and today my experiment will include what melts ice the quickest using 3 different liquids, which will be water, pop, and vinegar. Like I had previously mentioned, I will be doing my experiment on what melts ice the fastest using water, vinegar, and pop. So for my experiment, I will be placing an ice cube into a glass of room temperature water, pop, and vinegar. I'll be experimenting to figure out which liquid the ice cube will melt the fastest in. So for my research and my hypothesis, many sources after looking this up said that ice helps keep the carbonation in pop. So I'm not sure how that will affect the experiment and how it will affect the melting of the ice cube. For vinegar, I know that vinegar will melt ice because it has hydrogen ions and acetate ions, which will lower the freezing point, causing the ice cube, to melt. And then water we know will cause the ice cube to melt because they're the same properties. I'm just unsure on how all of this information will affect the experiment, but I do predict that the ice cube will melt the fastest in the glass of room temperature water as opposed to the vinegar and the pop because they are the same properties. So that's why I believe it will melt the quickest. So the independent variables, dependent variables, and constants. The independent variables in this experiment will be the 3 liquids, being the pop, vinegar, and the water, because the ice cubes will be placed into it and they are all different. The dependent variables is the time it will take for each ice cube to melt, because those won't be the same. And the constants are the temperatures of each liquid and the ice cubes, because these things are all the same for each liquid. So this is the experiment in action. This is when I had first placed the liquids into the cup. So from left to right, I have the pop, the vinegar, and the water. This was when I had first placed it, so they are still a little bit cold. The vinegar was probably at room temperature, and so was the water. But as you can see, the pop was still cold, so I waited several hours to let those all reach room temperature before conducting the experiment. This is the experiment in action part 2. This was when I had first placed the ice cubes into the liquid, which is kind of hard to see, but if you look at the glass all the way to the right, you can see the ice cube there. And then I have the timer that I had set. So lap 1 was 9:45, lap 2 was 52 seconds longer, and lap 3 was 4 minutes and 28 seconds longer. So these will play into it once I show you the chart. So these were the results. This was the time taken for the ice cubes to melt in each liquid. And then here we have my conclusion. So after conducting this experiment, we can conclude that the water made the ice cube melt the quickest. So the water took 9 minutes and 45 seconds. Then being the pop took 10 minutes and 37 seconds. And lastly, the vinegar took 15 minutes and 6 seconds. So you can see that the pop and the water were very similar in time. The pop took about a little less than a minute longer to melt the ice cube, and the vinegar took a lot longer. So yeah, those two were very similar. My hypothesis was correct in saying that the water made the ice cube melt the quickest, or would, and we can conclude from this experiment that ice cubes do melt at different paces when they're put into different liquids.